So this is quite a story. This is a story that shows the bipartisan assault on the Constitution and journalism and a free press. So it wasn't Trump getting in Jim Acosta, calling Jim Acosta a name. It was Trump and Pompeo and Obama and Biden trying to kill and kidnap journalists for reporting on war crimes. And so this story is now being reported by Yahoo, but Grayzone broke this story in 2020. We're going to get to that. So this is what's being reported now. Kidnapping, assassination, and a London shootout inside the CIA's secret war plans against WikiLeaks. Discussions over kidnapping or killing Assange occurred at the highest levels of the Trump administration, said a former senior counterintelligence official. There seemed to be no boundaries. Senior officials inside the CIA and the Trump administration discussed killing Assange. That's the guy Cenk Uygur says was working for Trump. Assange was working for Trump. That's what Cenk Uygur says, and the people at the Young Turks go along with it. They say that he was working for the guy who was actively trying to kill him. That's how corrupt the Young Turks and Cenk Uygur are. That's how corrupt they are. They're willing to lie and do the thing that they claim Trump is doing, assaulting journalism. That's what the Young Turks do. That's what Cenk Uygur does, going after Julian Assange, saying he's working for Trump as Trump was trying to kill him. That's the most egregious thing you can do in the news space. And the Young Turks did it at the top of their lungs and have never apologized for it. And that video is still up. And they'll never have to answer for it because he's doing the bidding of the CIA and the establishment, Cenk Uygur and the TYT, when they smear Julian Assange. That's who they're doing the bidding of. The Trump administration, Pompeo, and now Biden. That's who the Young Turks and Cenk Uygur are doing the bidding of when they say Assange was working for Trump. So going so far as to they requested sketches or options for how to assassinate him. The conversations were part of an unprecedented CIA campaign directed against WikiLeaks and its founder. The agency's multi-pronged plans also include extensive spying on WikiLeaks associates, sowing discord among the group's members, and stealing their electronic devices. This is what Trump was doing. President Trump's newly installed CIA director, Mike Pompeo, was seeking revenge on WikiLeaks and Assange. They were seeing blood, said former Trump security officials. The CIA's fury at WikiLeaks led Pompeo to publicly describe the group in 2017 as a non-state hostile intelligence service. The designation opened the door for agency operatives to take aggressive actions, treating the organization as it does adversary spy services. So they were treating a journalist and a journalist outlet, a news outlet, as if they were a hostile spy agency. Pompeo and others at the agency proposed abducting Assange from the embassy and surreptitiously bringing him back to the United States via a third country, a process known as rendition. The idea was to break into the embassy, drag Assange out, and bring him to where we want, said a former intelligence official. Some discussions even went beyond kidnapping. U.S. officials had also considered killing Assange, according to 3 former officials. One of those officials said he was briefed on a spring 2017 meeting in which the president asked whether the CIA could assassinate Assange and provide him options for how to do so. They're talking about killing journalists. That's what they're planning. That's what the CIA does. They're not good guys. They're not Boy Scouts. They're the terrorists. They're the murderers. And here's Pompeo.
When I was a cadet.
Here's Pompeo out in public talking about what a big liar and criminal that he is at the CIA. Watch this.
When I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So in late 2017, in the midst of the debate over kidnapping and assassinations, the agency's plans were upended when U.S. officials picked up what they viewed as alarming reports that Russian intelligence operatives were preparing to sneak Assange out of the United Kingdom to Moscow. That's a double CK. In response, the CIA and the White House began preparing for a number of scenarios to foil Assange's Russian departure plans. Those included potential gun battles with Kremlin operatives on the streets of London, crashing a car into a Russian diplomatic vehicle, transporting Assange, and then grabbing him and shooting out the tires of a Russian plane carrying Assange before he could take off for Moscow. We had all sorts of reasons to believe he was contemplating getting the hell out of here, said a former senior official, adding that one report said Assange might try to escape the embassy hidden in a laundry cart. It was going to be like a Prison Break movie. So this you tweeted this out. So here it is from the is this the Guardian? The only barrier to Julian Assange's leaving Ecuador's embassy is pride. That's from a guy named James Ball. The WikiLeaks founder is unlikely to face prosecution in the U.S. charges. So this is just what a garbage. Just garbage. The Obama administration's view of WikiLeaks underwent a sea change shortly before Donald Trump, helped in part by WikiLeaks. So as they're trying to kill him, this guy's writing an article saying that it's Julian Assange is a big fucking egomaniac. It's his pride that's keeping him there. Not that they're trying to kill him. The CIA. The Obama administration's view of WikiLeaks underwent a sea change shortly before Donald Trump, helped in part by WikiLeaks' release of Democratic campaign emails, won a surprise victory over Clinton in the 2016 election. After the publication of the Democratic Party emails, there was zero debate on the issue of whether the CIA would increase its spying on WikiLeaks, said a former intelligence official. So Obama's administration with Biden switched into going after WikiLeaks full throttle. The CIA now considered people affiliated with WikiLeaks valid targets for various types of spying, including close-in technical collections, such as bugs, sometimes enabled by in-person espionage, and remote operations, meaning, among other things, the hacking of WikiLeaks members' devices from afar. Asked whether the CIA had broken into WikiLeaks associates' homes and stolen or wiped their hard drives, a former intelligence official declined to go into detail, but said that some actions were taken. Yahoo News did not break the story of the CIA's spying on and murderous designs for Assange. Max Blumenthal did in May of 2020. Why did so few pay attention to it back then? And here it is. Here's that article. The American Friends, new court files exposes Sheldon Adelson's security team in U.S. spy operation against Julian Assange. So this is from the Grayzone. Files obtained by the Grayzone detailed an elaborate and illegal U.S. surveillance operation in which the security firm UC Global spied on Julian Assange, his legal team, his American friends, U.S. journalists, and on an American member of Congress who had been dispatched to the Ecuadorian embassy by President Trump. Even the Ecuadorian diplomats whom UC Global was hired to protect were targeted by the spy ring. UC Global staffers recalled the Americans were desperate to end Assange's presence in the embassy. They were proposing to activate more extreme measures against him, including the possibility of leaving one diplomatic mission door open to kidnap the asylum seeker, or even the possibility of poisoning Mr. Assange. Throughout the Black Operations campaign, U.S. intelligence appears to have worked through Sheldon Adelson's Las Vegas Sands, a company that had previously served as an alleged front for a CIA blackmail operation several years earlier. Now let me bring in Max Blumenthal, who wrote that article in May of 2020. So he broke that story, but now it's only being reported now, a year and a half later. Why is that, Max?
Well, because the mainstream media has completely abandoned Julian Assange. And after demonizing him and participating in the information war against him in WikiLeaks. So this article by Michael Isikoff and a team at Yahoo News tracks very closely with my article, and Isikoff, through all his spook sources, which he used to whip up Russiagate, where he confessed that he got a large part of the story wrong and disowned a large part of his book with David Corn on the Steele dossier. He's bringing 30 U.S. former and current intelligence officers to bear in this story to basically confirm my reporting and the reporting of others. I wasn't the only reporter working on this story, but I brought out many details that hadn't been previously reported or accentuated. And Sheldon Adelson being the sort of third party that ran this CIA black operation was one of them, along with the documents that I was able to obtain of internal communications and testimony by employees of the firm that was used by the CIA, hired through Sheldon Adelson's Las Vegas Sands Corporation to target Julian Assange and all his associates. So it was all there in clear print. I mean, I even produced screenshots of these documents and the text messages from the firm hired by the CIA about everything they were doing. They confessed everything down to considering poisoning Julian Assange, considering leaving a door open at the embassy, the Ecuadorian embassy where he was holed up in London, to send a kidnap team in to get him, and the targeting of all of his associates, including Glenn Greenwald, who we see in this Yahoo News piece along with Laura Poitras was targeted. The spying on Julian Assange's partner, Stella Morris, the spying on their child, sending even an operative to snatch their child's diaper out of a trash can in order to do a DNA test on them, seizing journalists' devices, laptops, including journalists like Ellen Nakashima, who's the chief national security correspondent for the Washington Post, who went to visit Assange. She had her laptop snatched by CIA agents in the Ecuadorian embassy, and they went into her devices, and she never said a damn word about it. This should have been a major front page story. The CIA is targeting American journalists because they went to visit Julian Assange. I mean, it was all there. Yahoo News is not really breaking anything new here. They're just taking what independent media had been doing and what the Grayzone had been doing and putting it in a mainstream space, and then applying this new Russiagate veneer to the story to continue to cast Julian Assange in a negative light as a potential Russian asset or Kremlin tool. And that's a separate issue. We can get into that. But basically, I was able to report this story because the head of the firm, who is recruited through Sheldon Adelson's Las Vegas Sands, his name is David Morales. Sands was recruiting him through a CIA asset. Pompeo was obviously presiding over this whole operation to recruit him. They recruited him because he was already running security at the Ecuadorian embassy with his firm while Julian Assange was there. And he wanted to be like a big man in the security world. So after being recruited at this security fair in Las Vegas, he wrote back to his employees in Spain and said, "We're playing with the big boys now. We're working for the Americans." They changed all the cameras out in the embassy, put in hidden mics to spy on all Julian Assange's conversations with his lawyers, watched everything he did. And, meanwhile, we're plotting to kill him in Langley. And we're told to harass and to harass and spy on all of his associates. So WikiLeaks people who came there, journalists who came there, friends of Julian Assange, Randy Credico, our friend who's an activist and comedian who went to visit Julian Assange. All of them were spied on. And Morales was eventually kind of turned in by his employees because of the assassination plot. When he started proposing poisoning Assange, and this was obviously, now we know it's coming from Langley, his employees started to say this is too much. They went to Spanish police. The Spanish police initiated an investigation. Morales was arrested on his way back from a very suspicious trip to South America in Spain. He was put on trial in the Spanish National Court, the same court where former Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet was put on trial. The trial is ongoing. And I was able to obtain a lot of the files, the internal communications of Morales's firm through that case. And these files told the story of the war on WikiLeaks, the war on Julian Assange. And it was obvious when you read them, when you read the WhatsApp messages and text messages from Morales, he's constantly talking about the American client, the American friends. He's writing messages from IP addresses at Las Vegas Sands, but they're being written and they're instructions on how to swap out certain programs in the camera system that's spying on Assange, but they're written in perfect English at Las Vegas Sands as if an intelligence operative is kind of hovering over his shoulder. Morales speaks Spanish. His English is very poor, very, very poor. So it was obvious to me that the CIA was directing this operation. And, it becomes increasingly clear when you consider the relationship of Sheldon Adelson, who the CIA was using to give itself plausible deniability, running everything through his operation, the relationship of Adelson to Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo. Adelson was the top donor, individual donor to Donald Trump's political campaigns. He basically crafted through Jared Kushner Donald Trump's Middle East policy. And Mike Pompeo, if he runs for Senate in Kansas or if he runs for president, I bet you anything we're going to see Sheldon Adelson take a strong interest in helping Mike Pompeo. So, and that will help confirm this story even further. But just kind of, you can get lost in a lot of the details. What we have here is the Central Intelligence Agency assaulting journalism itself and targeting a journalist as revenge for that journalist embarrassing the national security state and even considering killing them. The fact that that hasn't sent shockwaves through the entire practice of journalism and triggered the kind of outrage we saw when Donald Trump was mean to one of the most annoying people in the Beltway press corps, Jim Acosta, is really an indictment of the whole mainstream media.
Yes, which is why someone as unqualified as me can step into the journalism world and outdo those motherfuckers whenever I feel like it. Because
they believe in nothing. I mean, Julian Assange, how many stories did WikiLeaks feed them over the years? How right was WikiLeaks about Afghanistan? How many front page stories relied on WikiLeaks? And then, Julian Assange gets arrested in this massive violation of the sovereignty of Ecuador. I mean, it's such a shocking operation with British police running up into Ecuadorian sovereign territory, dragging him out. He's being held. And the Washington Post and New York Times endorsed that.
Yes.
They endorsed that.
Yes, of course. So this idea that Trump is the bad guy in America, or that Trump is the only bad guy in America, is it's the biggest lie I think ever told. Because they're all as despicable or more. Joe Biden has a much longer kill list than than Donald Trump does. That's for sure. Joe Biden has inflicted way more pain on black and brown people in the United States than Trump ever did. That's for goddamn sure. So and so this idea that that other people are good people, like Joe Biden or the people in the CIA or people in the FBI. They're all criminals of the highest order. And they don't give a shit about the Constitution or free press or journalism or liberty. They don't care about any of that. And this story proves it. And Max blew this story open over a year and a half ago. And now Michael Isikoff, who spent 5 years misinforming people about Trump and Russiagate, finally admitted he did. Now, a year and a half after you broke the story, he's pretending to break. They're all pretending to break the story. So that's great. It just
I mean, there was no credit there, and what Isikoff did was he added an entire extra section to imply that Assange was a Russian agent of some sort.
Yes. So they had to push Russia in there, and it was just made up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically in 2017, there was a plan to get Assange out of the embassy, and it was being crafted by his lawyers with the cooperation of the Ecuadorian government and specifically the Ecuadorian security services, SENAIN. And the Ecuadorian security services didn't know that the CIA had infiltrated their camera system and taken over the security firm that had been hired to protect Assange. So they sent their chief, Romy Vallejo, like Pompeo's counterpart, to meet with Assange during the final hour. And Vallejo didn't know that he was being spied on by the CIA. The CIA knew about this. U.S. diplomats in Ecuador began threatening the Ecuadorian government not to do it. It was clear that the U.S. knew about the plan. But I interviewed several people who were involved in the plan, and none of them mentioned to me anything about having Russian agents actually come and try to spirit Assange out of the embassy and engage in gunfights with the British Secret Services, the MI5, as Isikoff described. In fact, the plan was to simply grant him diplomatic status, and it could have been from a country. One of the countries they mentioned was Evo Morales' Bolivia. Another country was Serbia. Russia was in the list of countries, but to concoct an operation where you would actually have to potentially rush Julian Assange through British territory, through London, in some kind of Russian spy car to an airplane and engage in possible gunfights with British secret police seems like, I mean, that was never mentioned, and it's something that Assange and WikiLeaks would have rejected. So Isikoff, for all the good this story does and bringing out the fact that the CIA has considered killing Assange and his associates and showing how this case has completely fallen apart. The fact that his attorney-client privilege was so flagrantly violated and that his meetings with his lawyers were spied on means that he can't possibly have a fair trial in the U.S. if he's extradited. But Isikoff then adds all of this whole element about Russia trying to get Assange out of the country without really considering what the actual people who made the plan had to say, and kind of undoes a lot of the good that the story does. And that, that's what Isikoff's been doing for the past few years.
Well, so he's just repeating. So he went from repeating one CIA conspiracy theory bullshit thing, which was Russiagate, to this new. He just got it right from the CIA people. That's where this comes from, and he repeats it uncritically that the CIA said that Russia was planning to do this. They're just making it up. And then Isikoff just repeats it uncritically. He doesn't even say, let's remember this is the same CIA that's been lying all along. He doesn't do any of that. But great work, Max. That was fantastic. Of course, nobody knows the ins and outs more than you. So I appreciate you coming on and enlightening everybody. That's quite. So again, the United States press is ignoring
just consider all the elements in the story. It should be a Hollywood blockbuster film or a Netflix series. I mean, it's all there, and they won't touch it.
And they won't touch it. You're right.
And I mean, like I said, Washington Post top national security reporter was spied on by the CIA while meeting Assange, had her devices taken. Anthony Lowell Bergman, who worked for the New York Times and NPR, he spied on as well. Glenn Greenwald spied on, had his devices taken. Even worse, there was a directive to paint Greenwald as some kind of Russian agent if they could gather the information. Laura Poitras targeted as well. European associates of WikiLeaks. There was a proposal to assassinate them. This is all on the record now. We know this to be true. It's not just whatever Isikoff's sources say. It's what is clearly laid out by these internal documents that have tumbled out of the Spanish National Court that are the internal communications of the firm that the CIA hired. And it's just such an amazing story, and the media won't touch it. The public would love to hear about this. I mean, how is some magazine like the New Yorker, New York Magazine, or whatever, The Atlantic, not going to sell an issue off this if it's on the cover?
Right.
It's because they hate Assange, because they love the national security state, because they are the national security state. They're the megaphone and stenographers of the national security state. And when Atlantic Magazine has its ideas festivals, who's there to rustle up the bucks and sell and pay for these meetings for sale with the Atlantic's top journalists? Who's funding these ideas festivals? Boeing, the arms industry, Big Pharma, and everyone who has skin in the game on all of these official narratives.
Okay, Max Blumenthal from the Grayzone, thank you so much for coming on. Journalism is under assault in the United States and abroad, and it's coming from the establishment. They're not defending journalism; they're assaulting it.
The mainstream media is assaulting journalism.
Yes, 100%. We're doing a live Jimmy Dore show in Sacramento, October 3rd. We're just added a second show. Plus, we're doing stand-up comedy in Florida, in West Palm Beach, and Dania. And then we're going to Buffalo, Baltimore, Tempe, and Portland. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all our tickets.